Hi, in the last video, we discussed challenges to a strict behaviors explanation of classical conditioning effects. Associative bias adds another layer of complexity. According to associative bias, some associations may be easier to learn than others due to evolutionary constraints. The theory is that the ability to quickly learn some types of associations provided a survival advantage to our ancestors. And these propensities become part of our evolutionary inheritance. For instance, a rat that quickly learns to associate taste with physical illness will avoid poison and survive to pass on his genes. A rat that does not learn this will continue to eat the weird tasting poisoned food and die. So let's look at an experiment that was used to test this theory. We have 4 different groups of rats and 2 key variables. Our first variable is the neutral stimulus that is added to their water, a novel taste or an auditory stimulus and noise. The second variable is the aversive unconditioned stimulus, either x-rays that make the rat vomit or an electrical shock. So let's break this down. This is a little complex. In our first group, we have the novel taste paired with an electric shock. So we have a novel taste that's paired with an electric shock. In our second group, we have the novel taste that is paired with the x-rays that induce vomiting. In the third group, we have a novel sound that's paired with the electric shock. And finally, in the fourth group, we have the novel sound that is paired with the x-rays that induce vomiting. The question is, how quickly and easily do the rats produce the conditioned avoidance response to the taste or the noise? The researchers found that the second and third groups very quickly learned to avoid the conditioned stimulus, the novel taste or noise, whereas our first and our fourth groups had a difficult time learning these associations. And think about it. The last time that you had an upset stomach, did you think, wow, it must have been that new song on the radio? Or did you think, wow, I shouldn't have tried that new restaurant? Our rats are the same. They could easily associate the vomiting with taste, but had a difficult time pairing it with the auditory stimulus and noise. They could easily pair the electric shock with the noise, but had a difficult time pairing it with the novel taste. The argument is that their biology and ours constrains conditioning. These constraints are influenced by our environment and the survival challenges that we face, and that, more to the point, our ancestors faced in our evolutionary past. In our environment, we encounter food that is potentially dangerous if consumed. It's important to learn how to predict which foods are safe and which are not. Taste typically accompanies food, but rarely does this food emit some type of sound that could be used as a conditioned stimulus to predict some type of negative consequence or unconditioned stimulus, like feeling nauseous or an upset stomach. Why is this important? One application is it may help us to better understand and minimize the side effects of chemotherapy. Chemotherapy causes nauseating side effects that are often so severe that patients develop generalized food aversion and lose their appetite completely. And so we have a wide variety of foods that have become conditioned stimuli to predict these nauseating side effects. It's thought that classical conditioning contributes to this problem. So patients are pairing foods consumed prior to treatment sessions with the nausea they experience, and they exhibit a conditioned avoidance response to these foods that they consume prior to treatment. As such, one recommendation is to consume only one type of food with a highly distinctive taste just prior to the session. That way, only that particular taste produces conditioned avoidance, and the overall appetite is preserved so that we have healthy eating behaviors in our cancer patients. You may be thinking, well, can't we just logically think that it's the medication that's producing the side effect and not the foods? It seems that when we look at these biological constraints, some associations are so prepared biologically that it's difficult to logically contradict this. And so even though we may have the knowledge that it's not the food producing the side effects, we still have our conditioned response of avoidance. If we further investigate the biological implications of classical conditioning, we can investigate additional important applications from a therapeutic perspective. We can combine our understanding of basic biology, specifically homeostasis, with our knowledge of classical conditioning to explain conditioned compensatory responses. Our body seeks to maintain homeostasis and equilibrium and functioning. The introduction of foreign stimuli, for instance, prescription or illicit drugs, can disrupt homeostasis. If I give you a shot of adrenaline, your heart rate will elevate, but your body will attempt to regulate this and bring your heart rate back down. If I repeatedly administer adrenaline, your body may attempt to predict the introduction of the drug and take preemptive steps to maintain homeostasis. So you lower your heart rate, you lower your elevation of your heart rate, your respiration, etc., in anticipation of the adrenaline, so that the elevation it produces is not as dramatically different from homeostasis. We may rely on classical conditioning to make such predictions. If the drug or substance is repeatedly administered, previous neutral stimuli may become conditioned stimuli through their association with the drug. So if we have paraphernalia or environmental cues that are repeatedly paired with the drug, these may become conditioned stimuli that elicit a conditioned compensatory response. For example, if the drug is a stimulant, the body may lower arousal levels to compensate for the stimulating effects of the drug. This can help to explain drug habituation or tolerance, the tendency for habitual drug users to have a blunted response to the drug. This blunted response may be due to a conditioned compensatory response. The drug over time doesn't produce a strong effect because the body has learned to predict the onset of the drug via conditioned stimuli and maintains homeostasis. What may happen is that the individual increases the dose to produce the desired effect. So we have this vicious cycle. The body is seeking to maintain homeostasis. The individual is seeking to counteract this conditioned tolerance through increases in dosage. Siegel and colleagues predicted that this could be a recipe for disaster if the conditioned response is situation specific, which it should be according to classical conditioning. So the prediction is that the tolerance only exists when the conditioned stimuli are present. In the absence of the conditioned stimuli, the body is unprepared for the onset of the drug. It hasn't taken these preemptive measures to prepare for the effects of the drug. Hitting the body with a high dose when it is unprepared could have disastrous effects. This high dose is tolerated in familiar environments, but could shock the system in a new environment. They devised a study to test this hypothesis. In the control condition, rats are given a one-time high dose of heroin. 96% of rats in this condition died from overdose. In the second group, rats started with smaller doses, but were progressively increased to produce tolerance. They were then given a large dose in a new location. 64% died in fatal overdose. So the progression of the increase in the doses did little to protect the rats when that large final dose was administered in a new environment. We can compare this to the last group. Again, tolerance is developed, but they are given the final large dose in the familiar environment. Only here do we see the protective compensatory response. Only 32% overdosed in this condition. So we see a large increase in risk when the large dose is introduced in a new environment. In this new environment, the conditioned stimuli are not present to elicit the conditioned compensatory response needed to protect the body from the shock of the substance. This could be one reason why we see some of our beloved celebrities overdose in hotel rooms. Perhaps these individuals built up a tolerance in familiar environments. Then when they took the drug in a novel environment at a high dose, that compensatory response was disrupted and their body was unprepared for this high dose. Of course, we can't know for sure. There could be many contributing factors, but this research can help to better understand and treat addiction.